Well, here we are. It is Friday, July 24th, 2026, and this is the weekly video. Every Friday, we take a look at the results and upcoming sales from auctions for antiques, primarily Chinese and Asian art, but we also touch on Persian rugs and carpets when some come along that look nice, of course, and sometimes American furniture, Western art, European things. If something very good comes along in those areas and they catch my eye, we'll bring them into the video here. But this week, we're going to talk heavily about the Eldred sale. We've been talking about this sale now for a couple of weeks. It was a 4-day auction of Americana, American decorative art, China trade, you name it, down on in East Dennis and Cape Cod. We did a video on site down there previewing the China trade sale and all that. And it was a really fun bunch of stuff. It was great stuff. And the sales are pretty much wrapped up now, and they have a couple more coming in August. I haven't really looked at them that closely yet, but there's a marine sale and things like that. They do a lot of marine art auctions down in Cape Cod in the summer because there's a lot of people on Cape Cod in the summer, and many of them are avid sailors and people in love with the ocean, so makes total sense. And this sale did the China trade sale did very well, and the American furniture aspect also did extremely well, as did the decorative art. We can see here that there was a John Audubon print that sold for $130,000 plus the buyer's premium, so that brings it into. Let's take a quick look here. What was the total on this thing? $163,000 for an Audubon print. We haven't seen prices like that for Audubon prints for a while. Now, this was the Great Blue Heron. Of course, it's one of the most desirable ones, but nonetheless, that's a strong price for Audubon and not unreasonable based on the history of the sales of these things in the past. The carpets all did quite well. There was a very nice Persian backsheesh carpet that went for about $12,000 with the premium and whatnot. And I'm going to take a little look at some of the furniture, and then we're going to get right into the China trade. So stick around. And then we're going to talk also at the end of the video, hang around for that. There's a type of fake that's been popping up all over the market. And some of them are selling for a lot of money. Some of them aren't selling. But we're going to get into it. So if you see one, you're aware of it. All right. But it's a type of Wanley garlic neck vase. They are turning up. I found 4 or 5 of them just doing a quick image search the other day, and I was shocked how many have turned up. But at any rate, this is going to be the Dixon collection, starting off with this. And this is just one of the highlights of the sale was this very, very nice Queen Anne wing chair. Beautiful example, done in wonderful, extremely fine gold silk damask upholstery. This is a very fine New England one, probably Rhode Island area, or southern Massachusetts to Rhode Island. I suspect Rhode Island, judging by the characteristics of the chair itself, the way the legs are done, the stretcher, the shell carving on the knees, the pad feet, the way it's done, and these very, very nice arms scrolling outward and so forth. These are beautiful chairs. And these were extremely popular back in the 90s. And they seem to have some interest again. This one was estimated at just 5,000 to 10,000, sold for $12,500. But a fantastic piece of furniture. And then over to this, the Oxbow Bureau, and it was attributed to John Cogswell. And John Cogswell was a New England guy. His cabinet shop was in Boston, and he was most famous for making these Chippendale Bombay form chests, which became very stylish symbols of the super wealthy Boston merchant. And you only found them in the best Boston homes. And he was an Ipswich guy. He actually was raised from my living room across the bay here is Ipswich. It's right over here. And he was raised here. He went to Boston. He married well into a very well-known family. And he got into the right atmosphere, so to speak, and into the right circles for making very fine custom, among the craftsman community, making very, very fine custom furniture. And he was particularly well known for the Bombay chests, but he was also known for these very nice Oxbow front bureaus. And this was a very, very nice one, all in mahogany, of course. And it was very finely figured mahogany. If you look at the graining on it, it's very, very well done. Beautifully shaped, sort of OG ball and claw, OG bracket with this ball and claw on the bottom of it. Nice little fan carving here in the center on the drop, and then another foot over here, of course. Beautiful, probably handmade brasses, and then this nicely done shaped top. This was a great piece of furniture, and it did just fine. And it was estimated at $30,000 to $50,000 because they're kind of hard to estimate these days. And in the end, it came right down in the middle, $37,800 for this. But it was a wonderful piece of American furniture, and from Boston. And when you get into really fine Boston, New England, Newport furniture, this area, and Portsmouth, you can get some pretty big prices. And then over to this. This was a probably a Salem chest. It was a broken arch pediment, Chippendale broken arch pediment up here, block front bureau, chest on chest, beautiful reeded side panels down the side here with these columns on the left and the right. Nice fan carving in the center. Very architectural, this thing. And then you have these beautiful block fronts. And of course, block fronts were very, very popular in New England for a time. They were making them in Boston. They were making them in Salem. And most famously, of course, they were making them in Newport, Rhode Island, where they made the Goddard Townsend School of cabinet makers were. And those chests back in the 90s, some of you may recall, were selling for $3 to $5 million a piece, and handled by Israel Sack and Company, and all the big swingers at the time, all the big players. But this was also a lovely piece, nicely done. It had an old refinish on it, but beautiful proportions. Nice flame finials on top, and in the end, it did pretty well. It ended up going for $21,420 against an estimate of $10,000 to $15,000. And then hopping along over to this, Nantucket baskets. Now, Nantucket baskets were very, very popular in the 90s. And there were well-known dealers, top-end American furniture dealers like Wayne Pratt, who had a store on Nantucket. And he really built a market for Nantucket baskets because he recognized the quality of the work and their sort of importance to the Nantucket communities. They're almost symbols of Nantucket these days. Nantucket lightship baskets, as they were known. And this is one that was attributed to Captain Davis Hall's family, or to Captain Hall himself. And this was a very, very beautiful example. Extremely fine work. This is what the best of the baskets look like. These extremely fine, beautifully done, very controlled, very even, very neat baskets that they made. And they've been sort of out of fashion for a while, and suddenly they seem to be coming back. And this is an indicator of it. This was estimated at $3,000 to $5,000, and I know they based that estimate on recent prices, what they've been bringing the last time these things came through. Well, this one ended up selling for $25,200. There was also a Nesta baskets that brought around $9,000 or $10,000 in this sale. They weren't by somebody as well known as the Halls. The Halls were known for making particularly good baskets, but again, there seems to be a revival going on. And then over to this, that very, very neat Southern Massachusetts to Connecticut secretary desk. And I just love this thing. I thought it was funky and wacky, almost wanky, almost like folk art. Love the way the base is done, that beautiful curved bracket foot, and these swollen drawer fronts on the upper drawer, and then this very cool, nearly, I would call it folk art, very high-rise pediment off the top with these panels with these swan's heads on the tops, and then these great big turned finials on the sides above, sitting on fluted columns. Beautiful piece of furniture. And it was estimated, I thought very reasonably, at $25,000 to $50,000. It's a pretty wide range. And it's, again, they don't know what these things are going to bring these days, so they give it 100% range on the estimate. And it ended up going right into the middle of that, basically at $35,280. But it was a wonderful piece of furniture, wonderful chest. And, I hope one of you bought it. It was made of cherry, which makes it quite interesting. And again, very typical of Southern Massachusetts and Connecticut furniture. Connecticut furniture sometimes can be very folky in its feeling. They made some sort of wonky stuff, as they say. Same in Southern New Hampshire. They did the same kind of thing. All right, and then the sale went on and on. At any rate, I would suggest you go over and check it out, and you'll see what I'm talking about. There were wallpaper hat boxes that brought $1,700. There were all kinds of very nice primitive paintings. There was some very good sponge decorated and painted country furniture and so forth. The collection had everything, and all of it, to my mind, did quite well. It was all a very, very successful sale. So good on them for that. And then we get over to this. This was some of the Dixon pieces, as well as the collection of William Stroll. And we're going to start with this. This was that very fine miniature view of Canton, the Hongs of Canton. And you may recall in the video a couple of weeks ago that I did, I went up and showed you how small it was. This picture was around, I don't know, about 4 by 5 inches. I think it was 4 inches tall and 5 inches wide or something. Hold on, 3 3 3/4 inches by 5 inches. Was the image size of it. And then including the frame, it was 6 1/4 by 7.5 inches. So this was a very, very small painting. And in the end, it brought $27,730, but very rare painting, a very, very rare type of painting. Beautifully done. I believe this was from the Dixon family, but an excellent example, just really excellent, with an American flag right in the middle of the Hong. And then there was over to this was this extremely rare China trade carved ivory chop, dated to around 1820, 1825. Beautifully done. And this was quite small. It was only 1 3/4 inches deep and a couple inches wide, but very, very rare, extremely rare. And there was a lot of interest in it. And also because it's the 250th anniversary of the country. So there's maybe some people, maybe patriotism is running a little bit here. And someone bought it for $25,200 against a $3,000 to $5,000 estimate. And the truth is, how do you estimate a thing like this? Because if you've been collecting for any length of time and you've been looking at things and checking around the markets, when did you see one of these last? Well, I can tell you didn't. Okay, unless you saw it the first time it sold around 30 years ago in an auction. So that's just a very typical example of what can happen when people get excited and they see something great and they just have to own it. And that was it. And I don't begrudge them that. I think if this is the kind of thing that affects you emotionally, you just want to own it. Keep going until you get it. That's all I can tell you. Just keep going until you get it. That's how you buy at auction. And then there was the wonderful little miniature painting on ivory of Lam Qua, the father of Lam Qua, the artist who taught his brother Tin Qua, who built the famous studio in the Hongs, how to paint. It's a family industries. That's the way it is in China, the same as it is here. You have family businesses that go generationally, and this family were painters. Now, it's just simple as that. And this is a very lovely example. And he painted in the Western style, which really came to China through the Jesuits, who started going to China. The Giuseppe Castiglione, known as Lang Xining, was a favorite of several imperial courts during the 18th century. And he was a very fine painter, and he brought a style of painting into China they had not seen before. And the Chinese emperors liked it. The Chinese elites liked it. And this is the kind of work that he did on this. And of course, Lan Xining did all kinds of amazing paintings, but his influence carried well into the 19th century, long after he was gone. And painters like this came along and produced works like this. Now, this also was a very small painting. It measured 3 1/4 by 2 3/4 inches wide. This was tiny. It was a little tiny painting, and in the end, it brought $59,850. All right, the frame is kind of botched up. The frame will need some work. There's an area knocked off the bottom here. The Rococo work is missing off the frame, and it probably should be restored at some point because it may be the original frame or at least one of the early frames for it. Anyway, this picture was done around 1830. All right, and then hopping along over to this, and I'm showing this just out of sort of interest. You may remember a few weeks ago, or maybe when I did the video, I mentioned these square Canton teapots. They used to be so collectible, and nobody's been buying them for the last few years. And suddenly, this one did real well. It was estimated, I think, very reasonably at $500 to $700, and that was sort of on the high range of what they've been bringing in recent years. I've seen them sell for under $300. This one really took off, and it ended up going for $2,268. That was a very interesting surprise. And again, it's the kind of thing that would appeal to the Americana buyer, somebody building an American furniture collection, because it's a very unusual form. That's all there is to it. And then over to this, the massive 21-inch rose medallion punch bowl. When I looked at this, it was just wonderful to look at. If you saw the video and with me holding it, you get an idea how big this thing is. 21-inch punch bowls come along very, 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 very rarely, and it was indicated by the price realized in the end. It ended up going for $9,450. And the difference, of course, is if you have a 13 or 14-inch bowl, or 12 to 14-inch bowl, everybody has seen them around. What do they bring? They end up selling for anywhere from 8 or 900 on the low side up to maybe 14 or 1500 on the high side. That's sort of the range they've been selling in for years. But once you add on that extra 5 or 6 inches, what a difference it makes. And so if you see a 14-inch one, don't think it's worth 4 or 5 or 6,000. It's not. It's worth It's worth maybe 1,500 or 1,600, somewhere in that price range. This one really took off, and it was worth it. It was a great ball. It's very unusual, and it's going to be a long time before you see another one this size, unless somebody sees this one selling and they happen to have one just like it, and they decide to see if lightning will strike twice for them if they throw it in an auction somewhere. And if it does, we'll let you know. We'll watch for it. But at any rate, $9,450. And then over to this, the cornerless pronk, La Dame au Parasol. And these were done, of course, by cornerless pronk. And this was a very famous pattern that he designed. The Japanese even adopted it in some of their porcelains. It was done in underglazed blue. It was done in a wide range of enamels. It was done in a pretty good range of border decorations and so forth. And they turn up fairly often, especially in Europe. And they always do pretty well. This pair ended up selling for $2,268. But they were very, very nice. And we looked at them in the preview, and they were a beautiful pair. They were a beautiful pair. They were in fantastic condition. And of course, with all Chinese porcelain, whether it's export wares or domestic wares, condition. And these were in pristine condition. And I'm not sure where he got them. He might have bought them through Polly Latham in Boston, who's one of the best China trade dealers in the country. And then over to the Chinese export porcelain pistol-handled urns. I loved these. I thought these were really, really terrific. But lately, these pistol-handled urns, you've seen them in auctions, and they've been selling a pair like this. They've sold for 2,000 to 3,000, maybe 3,500, but they haven't been bringing a lot of money for the last number of years. Now, this was sort of an unusual pair because it had this very soft, beautiful, elegant cafe ground with butterflies, and then these very colorful famille rose mandarin panels worked into them. These were probably made in the 1820s, and then they put faux bois bases on them as well. So they had a lot of very interesting elements. So maybe it made them a bit rarer than the typical ones. They dated it just as first quarter of the 19th century, which is perfectly good dating. They were 16 and a half inches tall. One of them had a repair to one of the rims of the piece, but other than that, it wasn't anything significant. And in the end, it did very well. These did very well. They brought $11,340 all in and done, and quite a price, very good price. And then hopping along over to the paintings, all the paintings did great. This was the rice cultivation paintings. They were estimated at $1,200 to $1,800, and in the end, they brought over almost 5,000, over 4,000. Here they are. Beautifully done. And of course, rice cultivating is a very interesting subject matter. It was very interesting subject matter to the foreigners back then because growing rice was something that the Chinese, of course, were very, very well known for. And they used to paint do these wonderful paintings showing these sort of these beautiful sort of bucolic scenes of people out working in the rice paddies. Here they are picking the rice and so forth. They've got the gathering baskets on the side. And then what are they doing in this one? They're coming back with their baskets. You notice the pond is empty. They've picked all the rice out. So it's at the end of the harvest. And let's see here. They ended up selling for $4,095 with a $1,200 to $1,800 estimate. And these pictures were fairly good size. You have to understand that they were 15 to 20 inches on the paper size, just the sheet size, not including the frame. So they were pretty good size paintings, and they were in wonderful condition. They were in great shape. And then over to this is the thing I missed out on. I left a few grand on this. I didn't get it. And it was that wonderful Ming Buddha statue here. This was about 38 inches? 38 inches tall. Beautiful, beautiful face. I love the face on him. I just thought this was a great thing. And as you know, I love, you've watched previous videos. I love wood carvings, and I thought this was just a great thing. It was stuck off to the side, and I sort of pulled it out so I could get a good look at it. And no luck. Got smoked. It was estimated at only $800 to $1,200, which was a very modest estimate, of course, and it ended up going for $9,450 with the premium. Worth every penny. It was absolutely worth it. I was just being an impecunious Yankee, I guess, when I was leaving my bids. I was only about halfway to what it ended up going for, but wonderful example, just a great thing. And then over to this, that oversized Kangxi jar. And I showed this in the preview because it was very large for one of these. It was 9 inches tall and 8 inches wide. And you've seen these before, and they're typically, 5 to 6 inches, 5 to 7 inches, and they just look smaller. This thing was big, and it got quite a bit of interest. It ended up going for a rather surprising price, actually. It was estimated very low, $400 to $600. I thought it would bring $1,500 to $2,000. It went way over that. It went to $4,725. But it was a wonderful example, and it was big. It felt quite substantial when you picked the thing up. That's why it's so important to go to previews. If you live near auctions, you're going to hear me saying that a lot. Just go to the preview. Go to the previews. All right, and then there was this platter. This was a very, very beautiful platter, and it was something I had. One of my son Alex was with me when I went to do this, and he noticed this right away. He said, "Boy, that's a nice piece of porcelain." He went over and was looking at it. And, hello, Buck. And he went over and looked at it, and he thought it was just terrific. And I agreed with him. I said, it'll be very interesting to see how this does. Because this wasn't an especially big platter. It wasn't, it was only 14 inches long. It was sort of a standard size. And it was estimated at just $400 to $800. And it took off. And it ended up going for $4,095. So Alex was right. He thought it would do he said, I bet this does well. And he was right. It did just great. And then hopping along over to this. This was one of these Cabot, Samuel Cabot design plates with the pagoda in the center, and it's been this pattern has long been associated with the Cabot family in Boston. The interesting part of that story, as I recall, was that when they ordered the porcelain, they didn't really know a China trade captain just went over and ordered it for them or ordered it for him, and they didn't really pick this pattern. It was something that the artists over there selected, I believe, for them more than their own taste. But it was very successful, very beautiful. Sort of fits you corner splashes of flowers here. Nice looking shape with these invected edges on them, little touches like that. Very unusual. And it did, in the end, it did extremely well. It brought over 5,000, what was it, $5,040 against a $500 to $1,000 estimate. And again, strong prices, but it was in perfect condition. Perfect condition. And then the Chinese needlework altar panel, or banner as they called it. This was a nice thing. I thought it was just very beautiful. The colors were excellent when we looked at it at the preview. You may recall seeing the video of it. Very nicely detailed and no damage. No rot, no anything. It was in wonderful shape, and it was pretty good size. It was 35 by 34 inches. And in the end, it did great. It was only estimated $200 to $500, which we all know, that was just that they had to put an estimate on it, so they just threw that on there. And they knew it would bring more than that. One of the guys there said, yeah, it'll probably bring $1,000 or $2,000 anyway. And it went even over that. It ended up selling for, what was it, $2,898 all in and done. But an excellent example, and silk remains strong. There's still a lot of interest in Chinese silk these days. And then over to this, the man seated the table decorating porcelain bowls, and not surprisingly, because of the subject matter, decorating porcelain, the estimate on it was quite modest. It was only $500 to $700 or so, $400 to $700, and in the end, it did quite well. It brought $3,500 plus premium, or $4,410. And this was not a large site image. This was only a 9.5 by 11 inch piece of paper. But it was very attractively framed, and if you're a Chinese porcelain collector, this would be a really great thing to own, because they're the bowls waiting to be decorated. There he is painting them, and there's a China trade mug off to the side. Quite lovely, quite a nice thing. And then hopping along over to this, another pair of paintings, and these are the porcelain production paintings, and these even got more interested in the rice paintings, as I recall. But again, porcelain production, and these were large. They measured 17 by 21 inches on the paper size, and these were really quite lovely. Okay, sorry about that. Somebody was selling something I didn't want. You have this very nice porcelain production scenes here, and beautifully done. And again, in the classic Chinese style for the export market, very, very clean, very orderly, very, very sort of idyllic, almost idyllic looking. It would look like the kind of place anybody would be happy to work, I think, back in the early 1800s. And you have these very beautiful porcelains out, and you have people working at tables here, people over here trimming and cleaning up and so forth the pieces. And the picture of the back, Where's the rest of them? There we are. And then there's some over here with the workers shuttling them over. It looks, the second painting looked like, to me, like they were pulling the decorated bowls over to be fired with their new glazes. No, of course the kilns were much larger than this, but that's how they depicted them for the Westerners. And then how did they do? $9,450 all said and done. They did very well. And then the big Wan Li crack charger. Now, this was interesting. I looked at this. It did have a line in it, as I said in the video. It rang like a shoe, but it was 20 inches in diameter and very, very good quality. And sometimes the quality can overcome a little bit of damage, and it did in this case. It was estimated pretty modestly, but again, 20-inch charger. This was a big piece. It was estimated at $1,000 to $2,000, and it ended up going for $7,560 all said and done. Very nice quality, though, and this was, as I said before, an early piece of Wan Li production. This was not from the later period when they were covered with kiln grit and had, very, rough backs and not done terribly well. This one had a beautiful back on it, flat, unglazed, recessed bottom, no kiln grit that's really noticeable. Couple of tiny flecks of it on the edges, which is not any big issue. You find that fairly often, but very nicely finished on the back and beautifully decorated on the front and large. And despite the hairline, $7,560. Without the hairline, this probably would have brought $14,000 to $15,000. And then there was the tobacco leaf pattern dishes. These are always a favorite among the China trade collectors, and they were estimated very modestly, again, at $500 to $1,000. And in the end, they brought $6,300, or about $3,150 per plate. But again, very desirable types, and these were also in outstanding condition. These were also in very, very fine condition, nicely shaped rims on them, no wear to the enamels, no wear to the gilding, pretty much pristine. They look great. And the glazes were nice and smooth. There weren't any areas of wear on them. And off it went to the races, $6,300. And then hopping along over to this was something I really liked. This Chinese bronze figure with the stupa on his back, and it was a fairly large piece. This was 14 inches tall and 9 inches long, so it was a pretty sizable piece. And they had dated it as being 19th century, and I think it was a bit older than that. I think it was probably an 18th century piece, and I think the audience really liked it. It was only estimated at $300 to $500, and it ended up going for $3,528. And not undeservedly, but a very, very nice example. And this upper section lifted off up here. This top part, you may remember in the preview, I picked it up and took the top off so you could see it better. But very good quality all the way down, nicely cast, lovely piece, very lovely. And then over to the Chinese paintings of the birds. I loved these pictures. They were 17.5 by 14 inches, not including the frames. But very, very fine quality painting. The painting on this particular parrot just knocked me out. It was brilliantly colored. The paper was perfect. And it was just, the control of the artist who painted this is just amazing. And again, probably done in the first quarter of the 19th century, 1810 to 1825, somewhere in there. And there was a lot of interest in it. It was estimated at $8,000 to $1,200, ended up going for $5,040. So well over, as this is sort of the theme of the whole thing, everything went over the estimate pretty much. throughout the day. On the best things always, and that was it. And you can go. There were a lot more things that sold. I'd be here all day if I went through all the Chinese things. But all of the oil paintings had a lot of interest. All of the porcelains had good, solid interest, pretty much across the board, and so forth. And if you see a slightly lower price than you would expect, the chances are maybe the piece had some restoration to it. Some of the pieces did. All collections have a few restored pieces in them. But overall, this was a fantastic grouping between the Dixons and the Strolls, so the Dixon and the Stroll collection. So anyway, Bill Stroll would be very happy to know his things did so well. All right, now over to this. This is some of the things that are coming up this week. We're going to get on to this thing about the fakes I was talking about. This is an Ocean Art Auction Gallery and I don't know them very well, in Temple City, California. But this is a very nice China trade export fan, seeing as we're on a China trade thing. The estimate is kind of funny. It's estimated between $225 and $750. So it's sort of a strange thing. It should actually bring more than the high estimate. This is a very interesting fan because of the combination of materials in it. You've got, of course, the very nice gouache painting, watercolor painting across the top, this little village scene on this side. And then you have these gilt lacquer panels here, more painted areas of women and so forth in a sort of a courtyard setting. And then these beautifully done blades done in black lacquer with gilding, the stems coming down at the bottom. And then the other side of it is also decorated similarly with different scenes and different figures and so forth. This actually looks more likely to be the front of the fan with the bird in the center. At any rate, it's estimated at just $225 to $750. The sale is on July 30th at it's on Live Auctioneers, Ocean of Art Auction Gallery in Temple City, California. On the 30th of this month. It's got no bids at $100 currently. It's got only 7 people watching it, and I'm one of the watchers because I bookmarked it to share with everybody. So you got a chance here to buy a heck of a nice China trade fan, maybe for a reasonable amount of money. And then don't forget that the Sunburst auction, the book auction that we talked about, this sale came up about a month ago, is taking place, I believe, tomorrow. Hold on a second. I want to double check. Yeah, the sale is tomorrow. All right, and there's some pretty good reference books in there. If you're looking to fill some gaps in your reference book collection, check this sale out because you can get books very, very easily. This is a terrific book. For example, I set this one aside to share. Cloisonné by Pierre Eldred. Originally, this was published, I believe, in French, and then they did it in English. It's an excellent book. It was published. I got my copy back around the early '90s or late '80s. It's a terrific book, and it's a large book. It's pretty big. Is it Sakura or Rizzoli who did it? Does it say? The Asia Society Galleries. Okay, there we go, down there at the bottom. And it was done by Bamboo. It was another good publisher of art books back in the day. Nicely illustrated, rare examples. If you're a Cloisonné buyer, you want to get that book. And it's only estimated $30 to $50. It's got one bid on it. If it, to me, it's $100, $200 book, but it probably won't bring that. So you get it for a pretty good price. And remember, you can ship things book rate. If you get in with the right shipper, and they cost almost nothing to get to you. And then there's the Ming porcelain book. This was from the British exhibition, and this is that very great book that was published back when they did it. It was written by Craig Clunas and Jessica Harrison Hall, who's at the British Museum. 50 Years That Changed China. It's a paperback. It's a wonderful book, well illustrated, well researched, as are all the books the British Museum puts out. They're good. They always publish good books, interesting pieces of porcelain and cloisonné and all kinds of great Ming art. Estimate $30 to $50. It's got one bid, and it's got one bidder watching it, and that's it right now. Down here at the bottom, you can see it. All right. So check out that book sale. You might find some really great things in there. You've got the classics in here, Oriental Blue and White by Harry Gardner, which I think most of you have. If you don't have it, you should probably get it. It's a pretty good read. It's been around for a long time. And then you've got Chinese Glazes by Nigel Wood. Now, if you like Chinese porcelain glazes, Nigel Wood is the last word in Chinese glazes, as far as I know. He's a scientist, and he's written several books. This, I think, is the first edition. He did a revised edition also, but it's terrific. If you've ever been puzzled by glazes and how they're done and how they react to light and so forth, he explains it actually in pretty friendly, user-friendly terms. He's not too technical, and it's a good read. It's got some good information that helps you identify ceramics, and then there's all kinds of other pieces, lots of things here on bronzes, paintings, sculpture, all kinds of stuff. Go through it. If you didn't do it last time, do it. There's some Chinese porcelain in there, but I didn't really look. They didn't look too interesting to me, so I didn't spend any time on them, and so forth. So check that out. All right, now moving along. There's the cloisonne thing, and then this is just a reminder. The Clark auction in Larchmont is coming up on the 26th. It's coming up the day after tomorrow, and it's got this wonderful Japanese skeleton jar on it. Right now, it's got 88 people watching it. $300 to $500 estimate. It's already up to 700. And a friend of mine in New York, who's a whiz with Japanese stuff, he said, "Wait till you see what this ends up going for." He thinks it'll do pretty well. He doesn't think it'll bring 50,000, but he thinks it'll bring quite a lot more than the $700 it's currently at. And it's got 88 people watching it, so I suspect he's onto something. And then now we're going to talk about this vase issue before I finish up. This vase. And vases that look like this have been turning up everywhere. Now they're really going into some great effort to make them look old. All right, this one they drilled it. It may have been drilled a few years ago. And you look at the bottom of that jar. That's pretty convincing looking. All right, that's a pretty convincing looking vase from the bottom. The decoration, not quite as much. But they're making these, and one of the identifiers is that they have this yellow line through the middle, this white line on the luting line. The enamels, the red is a little too dark. There's a lot wrong with it, but at a glance, it could be pretty convincing looking. So this is what you want to look out for. And then they also do them with blue backgrounds, like these here. This is at Harbor Auctions, Inc. in East Vale, California. It closes on the 27th. These are reproductions, again, nearly identical to this one that we just looked at. Then there's another one. I found this one. Free shipping, stock, red glaze, flue, Ming dragon pattern. And again, this is a reproduction. And again, sort of a convincing looking bottom on it with unglazed biscuit, because that's what people expect to see. But the shape and the way this is trimmed and all of that is completely wrong, but at least it looks like it might be old. And there's some of the decoration. And then they have this red enamel that they use that they sometimes will scratch up to make it look like legitimate wear. And that was a color that was often used in the Ming Dynasty as a fill-in design. And the price is $63,000 apparently. I can't imagine that they're ever going to see that for it. And then there was another one here. Now this was at who sold this? Was it Tenmuku? I think this was Tenmuku. Tenmuku Auctions had this back in 2021. There's another one. So they've been coming around. This was about the first of the ones that I remember seeing about 4 or 5 years ago. And since then, they've done more and more and more of them. All right. So be very, very careful. And again, it's got a rather similar looking sort of scuffed up bottom. This one, they actually put scratches in the clay. It's got a repair on the top. You know, people are going to look at that and think, oh, that's an old repair. No, it's not. No, it's a repair made to look old. But when you look at this decoration here, you can immediately see that this is not, especially the blue, this is not what you want to see. All right. So these garlic neck vases, Wan Li, I suspect some of them will probably be, they'll date to the Zhaijing period, or try to anyway. Be very, very careful. And there's the mark at the top. You know, it's fairly convincing looking to some, I think. And it's a dangerous thing. It's a dangerous, dangerous thing. So keep all of that in mind. All right. So that sort of wraps it up for the week. I don't see any new sales coming on. We are going to talk about Rob Michaels. If you haven't seen it yet, I was looking at it the other day, and then somebody emailed me. It isn't on Live Auctioneers yet. But Rob Michaels over in the Netherlands has got a heck of a blue and white sale coming up. I think in early September. I'm going to spend some time digesting it, and we'll do a video just on that. It's a very, very good collection of rare forms, elephant form, vases and ewers and candies and all kinds. It's an extravaganza, and all of the pieces were bought from top flight European dealers. Or top flight auction houses. So I looked at the pieces a bit the other day, and I know that they look absolutely great. So bravo for that. and there's a couple of other sales coming on, but it's going to be quiet again still for the next few weeks. And then, like I said, that's a September sale. It is a September sale that's coming up at Michael's, and you're going to start to see the September sales getting posted in the next 2 weeks, I suspect, and then it's going to get very, very busy once again. So, at any rate, keep all that in mind. Thanks for watching. Give us a thumbs up, leave a comment, subscribe here if you haven't so far. Join us over on Patreon if you'd like. We posted a few video over there this week about something I thought was sort of funny that's going on at Sotheby's. Their never-ending saga of become a retail store. They're getting there. They're getting there. Sotheby's eventually will be like Macy's. You just hang on to it for a little bit longer. But in my opinion, they've sunk into a new low with something that they're doing. But what can you do? At any rate, if you haven't seen the video, check it out. And that's it. So we'll see you next week. Have a wonderful weekend. Enjoy the second half of your summer, and we'll be back next week. All right. Bye-bye.